I mean, a lot of times it's because we haven't individualized the dog's training. So if we have 2, 3 dogs, we're trying to train them all at once. We're not training them separately. So they don't each have that relationship we were talking about with the human. And then I also find because the owners are not working with each dog and the dog doesn't view that person as their fair and predictable provider, they might be looking to another dog as that fair and predictable provider, that one that I need to follow and look at what they're doing. And that's when you get dogs that are almost like obsessed with each other.
Welcome to the new episode of She Gets It Done. Make sure to hit subscribe, comment or like. We hope you love this week's episode. Enjoy! Just for the listeners that don't know you, if you would like to give a quick intro about yourself and
Sure. I'd love to. So hi, my name is Denise Partlow. I am the owner of Modernk9, sometimes known as Modernk9 Carolinas. So I wasn't always a dog trainer. I actually went to school for teaching. So I am a school teacher. I'm actually an interventionist the last 5 years. That just means I am pulling struggling students from their classes in the elementary school and working with them to try to help them catch up to their peers. And then sometimes I work with students that might need to be tested for a disability. But a lot of the things I do to help them catch up is very similar to what I do in dog training, because I'm having to break down any type of skill that they need to learn into small increments. So it's exactly what I do with dog training. And it's funny that I do find myself sometimes marking my students going, yes, like, no, don't do that. It just comes out. Good job. So, but for the last few years, I've been a dog trainer. I kind of fell into dog training. And if you told me 10 years ago that I was going to be a dog trainer, I would have been like, no, I'm a teacher. But I've always, always, always loved animals. I've always found any spare time to work with animals. And the way I did that most of the time, other than working with my own, is volunteering at shelters. And I've learned a lot, throughout the years. But once my personal children, I have 2 daughters, once they grew a little older and I kind of felt like I had a lot more free time, I started exploring it a little bit more. And actually, my Doberman Lincoln has a lot to do with it as well. We adopted him from a rescue at about, we think a year and a half. We're not 100% sure of his age. And he was just not the greatest dog, but love him for it because he's made me a really strong trainer. He just was reactive to everything and anything other than walking humans. But if you were running on a scooter, on a golf cart, in a vehicle, he was reactive. If you were a dog, he's reactive. He has a high prey drive. He didn't really know anything. He had no recall. He bit me twice the first month, all those great things. But I knew right away that okay, this dog's different. What I normally do isn't working. So I need to find a better way. It wasn't he needs to change. It was I need to change. I need to do something different. And it was actually a month before the pandemic hit. And so when the pandemic hit and we were home, schools were closed. So I was off for 2 weeks because we were quarantined. I just started doing more research on different methods and different things. And I had to really think out of the box for him. And people in my neighborhood would constantly stop me and ask me, how did you do that with him? They remember how he was and how are you doing that? And I had 2 other dogs, so I would walk all 3 of them at the same time. How are you walking 3? I just want to walk 1. And I'm like, I can show you, So at that point, the quarantine's over, but nobody's really leaving their house other than to go for a walk. So I was really excited. I was like, ooh, I've got something to do. I got myself a little calendar book. I'm writing down everybody's names, who I'm going to go see on Tuesday. And this is who I'm going to see on Thursday. And it's just all neighbors. So I felt really comfortable going to their homes. And they all tried throwing a bunch of money and gifts at me. I was like, this makes me feel really uncomfortable because I'm not a dog trainer at that time. And I was like, no need to pay me. I had prayed about this and this is an answered prayer. So don't pay me, but they threw stuff at me anyway. Mm-hmm. So I remember saying to my husband, this isn't stopping. My neighbors are now telling their friends and their friends are telling their friends and they're all contacting me. And I felt really awkward taking people's money, but at the same time, I didn't want to do it for free forever. So I went ahead and got certified. I found this really cool program because at the time, no trainers were shadowing anybody. Nobody was doing anything. There was no schools to go to. So I found this really great online program. But as you know, in the dog training industry, it's not really necessary to have certification. It was something I just kind of did for myself.
Yep.
And then, I just started and it just has never stopped. And I love it. I really, really love it. I enjoy it. So that's my story.
I love that. And it's pretty recent still,
Yeah, I was 2020. Yep.
Yeah.
Is when I started professionally. Absolutely.
And then when did sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and then when did you start your Instagram? Because that's how I found you, obviously.
Yeah. I started Facebook first. And I want to say maybe a year and a half later, I started Instagram, and actually my first account was hacked. I totally got fooled by one of those people, and my account got hacked. And I think I had like 5,000 followers, and I remember feeling devastated, like, oh my goodness, I worked so hard to get those 5,000. Yeah. But I was like, whatever, I'm just going to keep going, not a big deal. Let's just move forward. Let's move past this. I will never get fooled ever again. It's like, and I can't tell you how many people have tried after that.
Yeah.
I'm able to spot it now. I'm not as naive. And so started another one, and I want to say, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I would have to go check. I don't even know the date, to be honest. And I really enjoy that it's for me, because I love teaching. It just feels like a really great outlet for my teaching passion as well as dog training. So I love that it's a platform that I can deliver information in an effective way. And I love Instagram because you have the ability to like save things like thematically. Again, that's the teacher in me. So like the story highlights. I mean, I probably have way too many story highlights, but I love that I am able to like categorize things because I don't have a website. I probably will one day, but really, honestly, didn't really want to grow that much because I am a teacher and I felt like might be overwhelming, but I can't stop it.
Sounds like the way you got into it is actually how a lot of trainers ended up getting into it, is that they had problems with their own dogs and they wanted to make their lives better. So they got into it. And then once they got into it, they just got a bit addicted to it and loved it. And then now pursued.
The story is so similar to mine. Because I used to be primary school teacher myself.
I love it.
And it's the whole love of teaching, but I was kind of over the whole school communities and, the whole politics that comes with that.
Yeah. And then, I don't blame you. Yeah. I don't blame you.
And then we had the whole, my dog is being difficult and I had to get a dog trainer in myself. And suddenly we're here.
Yes. And I think that's what it comes down to is when you have that dog where things just aren't working. They're just not that easy. And you really have to think, and then you make that progress. And it's a really good feeling to see that progress, and that bond I made with my Doberman is different. It's like we're war buddies, So, whereas like my Rhodesian Ridgeback, he's like as sweet as pie. There's no battle there whatsoever. He's just such a great dog. He's so easy. So I was definitely, I'm grateful for him too.
And it's almost so enriching that you can provide that for other owners, right? When you get that, like those wins with your own dogs, and now you can go on to give it to help everyone else that they can have a better relationship with their dogs. Because I know personally, I have one like your dog, super easygoing, doesn't care about anything, can go anywhere. And then I got a second dog who has definitely challenged me a lot with my way of thinking, prey drive, like reactive, everything. And now we're finally like 2 years down the track and she's doing so well. And I thought, oh my God, I'm never going to get there. But having been already a trainer, but now she's there, I'm like, oh my God, like it's so rewarding. And I think having had my own dog like that, I can now sympathize so much more with owners now, more than I ever, like obviously I always sympathize, but having now been in that situation, I can sympathize so much more than I ever could before.
And
yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think that is so important, that if you are a dog trainer and you haven't lived that life, not saying you have to have a difficult dog, but, and I don't want to be mean to any other dog trainers, but what I find as a teacher with the abilities to teach, like that already helps, that you're more of a people person and not just a dog person.
Yeah.
But then you have a reactive dog and you really need that empathy to look at the human and not just at the dog. Because I feel like a lot of dog trainers will go into reactive dog owner's house and they'll go like, oh, you know, behind the scenes, right? They go like, oh, they did this wrong, they did that wrong, like they did that. And I'm like, yeah, but have you lived with a dog like that and not know what to do? Because I think if you grow up with dogs and maybe you go into dog sports and all that kind of stuff, and you have never lived with a dog where you went, I don't know, you kind of miss that whole feeling of like, oh, I was in this people's shoes. And at least that's how I feel about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I remember having all sorts of anxiety with that dog. It's the same thing that other owners go with. Like, you dread walking the dog. You see, if they're reactive to dogs, you see the dog and you're like, oh man, here we go. You know, like it's all the same things that everybody does. And you just develop your own anxieties. We become conditioned as well. And then it does feed into it, of course, but it doesn't necessarily create the dog's reactivity. So yes, I can definitely empathize with my clients because of that, because we get traumatized by the dog's reactivity. So it takes so much time. And that's one of the things I have to explain to my clients too, that I'm not going to sit here and tell you to calm down. Like that's not part of the program. Like you're going to be nervous. That's why we're going to take things slowly just for you too. Like I want you to feel comfortable and calm, because once you start feeling calm, then your dog's going to sense that, and then your dog's going to be doing well, and then you're going to feel that. And then it's just this cycle that keeps going on. It's going to take time. We both need to heal. So having a reactive dog is not easy, especially, you know, when they're big enough to like pull you. And that could even be like a 40-pound dog. Even a 40-pound dog, you know, reacting can make people, even smaller dogs too, if it makes them feel anxious because of what other people's perceive of them, that can make people feel uncomfortable too, because you're like, you don't have control over your dog, and then you feel embarrassed because they're like, they think I'm a horrible owner because I don't know what I'm doing, because I don't. You know. So then there's that side too. Everybody feels so uncomfortable with what we look like when our dog is reacting. So you know, there's a whole lot of anxiety involved in that. So
absolutely. And I think even like I struggled with my dog as it is, and I'm a dog trainer, so I can't imagine you know, owners that literally don't know anything, like how they've like coped for so long. So definitely empathize.
Right.
Yeah. And I saw you did you have quite a bit of information about like your multi-dog household on your page, and it actually really interested me because we haven't really talked about that much in podcasts. And so I wanted to ask you, what do you think are some of the common causes of conflict with like multi-dog households, like kind of going off reactivity and everything? Would you mind kind of talking about that a bit?
I mean, a lot of times it's because we haven't individualized the dog's training. So if we have 2-3 dogs, we're trying to train them all at once. We're not training them separately, so they don't each have that relationship we were talking about with the human. And then I also find, because the owners are not working with each dog, and the dog doesn't view that person as their fair and predictable provider, they might be looking to another dog as that fair and predictable provider, that one that I need to follow and look at what they're doing. And that's when you get dogs that are almost like obsessed with each other because they feel secure with that other dog. And I personally don't want that. I want my dogs to see me in that light. I don't want them viewing each other in that light, because they're not going to make good decisions. And I don't want you following a poor decision maker. So I think that is one of I mean, it always comes down to training, right? And a lot of times just because people don't know what to do. And that's why I try to provide as much information as possible. That was exactly like what you were talking about before, that because I had Lincoln and he was difficult, when I finally realized what worked, I was like, I need to share this with the world. Like, this is so easy. Not like so easy, but it's like, my gosh, like if we could just take the time to do this, it's so much easier living with a dog like this than living with an unruly dog, you know, or dogs. So,
right? Choose your
Yeah,
house.
I mean, like at first it's a lot of work to train, but in the long run, it's a lot easier to live with a well-trained dog. So like, sometimes people will be like, how do you do it? I'm like, how do you do it? Like, I can't not train my dogs because I know what it's like to live with a dog who's not trained, and I don't like it. I don't like it. Like, I love dogs, but I only like them when we can communicate. Like, I don't feel comfortable with the dog. So like whenever I get a foster dog, I know they're not going to know anything. So it's very strict boundaries until that dog's reliable. And I've taught it what I want to teach it. It's up to me to show them what I'm looking for, because they're not going to know. They'll come in and figure things out, but it's not going to be what you want them to figure out. They're going to do all the wrong things. For them, it's great. For you, not so much. So for me, like, I'll take that full week and I will do as much as I possibly can so that it just gets easier and easier over time. So I think when it comes to a multi-dog household, that's where people get stuck, is they're not training each dog individually and then training them together. There's a lot of conflict that can come from a multi-dog household because neither dog is getting the direction that they need. So they are feeling like they need to take that role, and they're making poor decisions. And then you have dogs that fight, they'll even fight over the human's attention. So, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, they feed each other out and about, and then they're all full-blown reactivity at other dogs and everything, and one feeds the other.
Yes. Exactly. That happens a lot too. A lot of owners don't realize that bonded dogs will do that. So if you have one dog that's normally reactive and barks at everything, but the other dog isn't reactive, that other dog's going to be reactive with the reactive dog. Like, that's just how it goes. They're bonded. They're like, it's like he's sticking up for his buddy. It's what they don't even know what they're barking at. They're just joining in because it's how they protect the pack. So, but that's another thing that we have to talk about: individual. Let's not walk them together. Let's, train them separately. And then for a long time, I couldn't walk my two together. I mean, and I knew that. And it didn't lead to a fun walk. I was nervous the whole time walking both. Even though my Rhodesian Ridgeback was perfect, I just couldn't give my Doberman the undivided attention I needed to with another dog with me. And so it actually made me feel worse walking both of them when I didn't feel like we'd mastered what we needed to master. And so now I can walk them and it's, very pleasant. But before that, I was like, no, thanks. I don't even want to. It's not fun for me. I don't come home feeling good, and I'm sure they don't either. So
Definitely. Do you feel like one of the, like, at least for me, when I go to a multi-dog household and I don't do aggression, I do like small things, but I don't do dogs fighting in the house. But one of the major problems I see is that dog owners think that if you have several dogs, they all have to adhere to the same rules. And to me, that, like, it could be as simple as like, oh, but I'm training Fido, so Max also needs a cookie. Like, he was not doing anything. Why are you feeding this dog? Well, simplest thing, like, oh, well, I can't just walk Fido because then Max will be sad.
Yes. I hear that a lot. Yeah. And that's where a lot of my multi-dog household material comes into play too, is knowing how to work multiple dogs at the same time, but it might not look like you are. So yes, at first you have to train them independently, and you have to individualize their training for that dog's needs, that dog's motivation. But then eventually we can get to a point where, maybe one is holding place while the other one's being worked with on something completely different, but you're still going back to the one that's holding place and maybe rewarding here and there just to make it beneficial, to show the dog, like, me staying in this spot while I'm watching my housemate being interacted with. Oh, it's beneficial for me. Like, I like this. I think that's a really great relationship to have. The dogs have to be okay with the other dog getting attention, and them just laying there. But I hear that a lot too. Like, I really wanted to take him outside, but then I knew the other one was going to get jealous. Like, we have to have ways to, okay, how about you put your dog in the crate? Or if somebody else is home, ask them to stay with them. Or, well, let's work on one dog's holding place and the other dog is working. Like, you can do it simultaneously, but obviously for that, the other dog has to know place, and you can't teach it then while you're trying to work with the other one. So it's just like a challenge you add into their play stay. So, I think that's definitely a big one. That's a good point.
Do you feel like place is one of the most used commands in your training? Is that something?
I do notice that it's probably one of the commands that's a client favorite because it's versatile. Like you can use it for so many things. And even for me, when I really want to increase the dog's impulse control, I'm going to use a play stay. But for me, and other trainers are different. A place stay for me, if I ask the dog for place, it really just means get your 4 paws on this surface that I'm pointing at. I don't care what position you're in. Now, if I want you in a specific position, then I will ask that after. I might say place, down, something like that. But in the beginning, if we're going to be using it to build the dog's impulse control, I don't want the dog to feel stuck. I don't want them to, if we're entering something that might be slightly concerning, I don't want to put them in a down because I think that makes them feel worse. I know I would not feel comfortable with you throwing a box of snakes on the ground while I'm laying there. Yeah. So, for me, I let the dog pick the position, but ultimately they end up laying down and you're rewarding them for that. And they get reinforced for that behavior. So I think it's a great, definitely a great skill for a dog to have, but it's also great for a multi-dog household because you got to have a spot like where they can all go. So I only have 2 personal dogs, but at any given time I can have way more. So like right now I have 5 dogs in my house, but they're not all mine. But it's nice not having to keep them all in crates. Like if I just need a break and I really don't want 5 large dogs just walking around my kitchen, like that can be annoying, especially if I'm cooking. Preparing food. Like I really don't want 5 noses just staring at me. So it's nice to have a place, it's just so versatile. Like there's so many ways you can use it. So yes, I really do love place, but I think a lot of other people do too.
I think it's interesting that you say it's a client favorite because for me, I feel like clients give up on it quite easily because let's face it, right? Practicing place is boring. It is, right? Because first you have to work on your duration. All right, let's see if we can get to a minute, and then just standing there. To me, I find it that I give it as homework. For example, I got just lovely clients with a watch, like a Swiss Shepherd, that I gave that as homework. And then I didn't see them for 3 weeks. And I was a puppy and it's a bit bouncy, so we need place. And I get there and it's like, oh yeah, we kind of forgot about that.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have to go back to it because you're gonna need this. But it is the one command that is so valuable that I find hard to like. People want it because they see it, but I don't think they always understand all the steps that come with it.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't, only because what I give them for homework, it is broken down. So for us, week 1, it's going to be focusing, getting the dog on the surface. Maybe if it's a dog cot, I usually use an elevated dog bed. Yeah. So first it's going to get the dog comfortable going on and off. We're going to attach the cue to it. We're going to release the dog, practice the release cue. And by the end of the lesson, when we're introducing place, I usually am able to get the owner to, take some steps backwards and the dog is still holding. So we're slowly building duration. So for the rest of the week, I give them a very specific thing for homework that they have to actively be involved in. So it's okay. Your goal by the time I come back is to be able to, wherever you place your dog, you have to be able to walk all the way to the other end of the room. That's not your goal for tonight. That's your goal by the time I come back. And we do weekly lessons. So I'm coming back in a week. Yeah. And so they have to take 1 step back, come back and reward, 2 steps, come back, 3 steps, come back. And so it's very active for them. And I think it's for them, it's because of those steps. It's easy for them to maintain because then the next week, we have to advance. But one of the things I tell my clients on the very first lesson is you're going to have homework. And if you don't do your homework, it's no sweat off my back. I have no problem coming back the next lesson and repeating everything we just did. It's your money. But if that happens, it's a waste of your money. So I always make sure I mention that on lesson 1 because I think they really need to understand that if you don't do your homework, I cannot advance. Like your dog's not a programmable robot. You have to do it. I have no problem repeating what we did. You're paying me anyway, it's not on me. So I always make sure that it's very clear in the beginning, because you're right, it can be hard. I do check in on my clients too throughout the week, and I ask them how it's going, because some people really do need to be held accountable. So we try our best. I very rarely have clients that don't follow through with their homework, but it could just be because I'm very like, I'm a teacher, you know.
Yeah, that's good though, because it is like, it's that, or people go too fast, you know, where you go very specifically, don't do more than 3 steps, and they walk straight to the end of the room.
And those are things they have to learn, you know, and so that's why I give them like a very specific plan. And I do tell them, if by day 3 you already made it to the end of the room and you feel like your dog is ready for more and you're kind of getting bored, just text me and I will give you one more thing to add on. So I'll give them something small that I can explain to them through text, you know, like effectively. I'm not going to give them something huge, so that they can add on so they don't get bored. But to be honest, most of my clients never take me up on that. Most of them are happy with where they are. And I like that. I want it to be easy. Usually lesson 1, I don't give them a lot of homework because I don't want them to be overwhelmed. I want it to be easy. And I want the owners to get comfortable with this marker system that we use. Like, you give the dog a cue, you mark, you wait a little bit, you mark again, like you release. Like, I want them to get comfortable with that system before we really start piling in some things.
Where you said, like, you cannot do the homework, but you're not going to get any further the next lesson. Like, I think that's a really good way to hold owners accountable, actually, that I hadn't really thought about. Because obviously, like, I tell people to, like, you know, you need to do this kind of stuff, but it is quite good. Like, it's kind of like
a warning.
It's a consequence for them. It's a consequence for them. Like, you know, this is going to happen if you don't do the work. So it's a really good tip. So I thought just, right.
Yes, it's helpful, like, when you can anticipate the issues that most clients are going to have. And so I usually try to address those typical things that I know they're going to struggle with, or that they're going to question. I try to address those at the first lesson, because a lot of people have a ton of misconception about training. So we try to get that out of the way, but that's one of them. Like,
a lot of people, I think a lot of people kind of take their, like, get a trainer, they kind of think, oh, the trainer's going to take the dog away, it's going to do some miraculous work, and then my dog's going to come back amazing. And then they're kind of shocked, because they're like, well, no, I'm actually only like 3% of the work, it's 97%.
Exactly.
And they're like, oh, right, I have to put the work in.
And I say that is one of the things I really do appreciate about social media, is because most of my clients come or contact me because they've seen me on social media, or somebody has told them about me. And so they do go on my page and they look at some of the things. So it's very rare that I'm getting someone that doesn't already know me. I mean, like, hasn't already heard of me and has already been watching a lot of what I do. So they're not like totally shocked with a lot of the stuff. So I am very thankful for that, because people can see the way that I train. And so that when we're going into it, it's not brand new. So I do love social media for that, because that makes it really helpful. And it does help to fill in some of those gaps that maybe I don't need to at the lesson, because they've been watching me for so long.
I think definitely social media has its cons, but I think it has actually really helped owners kind of get some really easy information in terms of, like, some simple dog training tips, but also open the world to, like, what they actually need to do to have a better relationship with their dogs, like you said, and also find, like, trainers that they really like their content that they kind of align with, so that they can go and approach those trainers. Because sometimes, especially before social media, I know, like, when I was looking, like, with my very first dog, looking up for dog trainers, you just kind of search dog trainer near me, and then you assume straight that trainer is going to be the one that's going to solve all your problems.
I know,
most of the time, not the case. And now, having been in the industry, you definitely learn that's the case. And I think that's a really good thing about social media.
Yeah, and it's so true, because it's so hard to find any two trainers alike. So it's great that people can see how I train, and they can decide for themselves if we're a good fit. So it really is very, very helpful that we don't have to discover that through lessons, that we're not a good fit. And they kind of already have heard me say a lot of the things I'm saying to them in the lesson. It's just really clicking for them now. But the way I look at it too is, you know, some people have asked me, like, how do you give so much, like, free content? You know, and I'm like, well, here's the way I look at it. those that really have a good, solid foundation in training can take what I give on social media, on a reel, a quick clip, and they can apply it. Those kinds of people don't necessarily need a trainer. It's the ones that still can't take it. Like, those are the ones that are going to need a trainer. Plus, I have like other options too. I offer like virtual meetings where I can develop a plan for somebody, and they can tell me, their goals and concerns. It's kind of like a consultation, and I can develop a plan for them. And that's a great way for them to determine, can I handle this on my own? But the other way that I look at it is, I did the same thing before I was a trainer. I looked up tons of things on YouTube, and actually Larry Crone, and I know you guys had him on recently. Love him, probably one of my favorite trainers. I learned a lot by watching his bajillion YouTube videos. So and he has even mentioned something like that. Like, you have to give back. Like, I learned from him. So of course I'm going to freely give. I didn't make up this stuff. I'm taking information from everywhere and then putting my own spin on it, So nothing really that I'm doing is brand new. So of course I'm going to share, but it doesn't matter how much info you put out there. There are some people who just can't apply it. They need that one-on-one guidance. Yeah. And that's what I love about private lessons, because some people really need that. Because there's a lot of them out there.
There's only so much you can do at online information, right? It's like,
right.
Sometimes you need someone to take the lead and just show you. Like, I don't know, like if I'm a piano player or whatever, like I just can't do it. I can't figure out how to play the piano with all these online things, and it's like, you play piano in an hour or whatever. I would need a teacher next to me to actually show me, no, your hand positioning is wrong or whatever. Like, I don't play piano, but I've always wanted to. But, so I agree with you. And I actually, just, compared to you, I'm tiny, but my YouTube is slowly growing, and I love that platform.
Yeah.
I've had clients now already like, I saw your YouTube video and that was really helpful, and now I want to work with you.
Yes, exactly.
It is tricky that for me initially it was also, if I give that away for free, then what makes people still want to come? But it builds trust.
It does, though. Yes, you're right.
People go like, hey, I like what you do. I like to post fails as well, or fails, like I did a video the other day on place and distance duration and all that kind of stuff. And then I got to distraction, and I was doing it with my own dogs, and they failed. They got up and they were like, oh my God, what are you doing? Because I was literally on the ground throwing treats. And people actually said, it's actually really nice to see that your dogs still fail as well. Sometimes having those robot dogs is demotivating for people that just have a little cavoodle that wants to do.
Yeah. Well, and it's not honest, because no dog is perfect. No one person has that much control over another being. You just don't. I mean, if we're going to think that the dog is going to be perfect all the time, we're lying to people, because that's not how it works. Dogs have their own minds, their own thoughts, and sometimes it's not going to be what you wanted. Like, that happens. And so I think that is so important to show people that this is what it really looks like. Yes, I'm a dog trainer, but my dog is not programmable. Like, that's not how it works. Yes, most of the time he's going to comply, but there are a handful of times that they don't. It could be for a variety of reasons. It could be he was too distracted, or genuinely didn't hear me, or I messed up. Like, I can tell you how many times I've used a hand signal and a different verbal cue. They did not go together. Like,
I do that too.
It just, we make mistakes too. We miscommunicate things sometimes, and because we're not dogs. But I think it's dishonest for people to always just show, like, this is my dog, it's perfect, it listens. No, it doesn't. Like, I will gladly show you how messed up we are sometimes. Like, you watch my stories, you'll see it. But I think that's important for people to see, because it does give them hope. And I've had a lot of people tell me that, like, this gives me so much hope. Or if I give them the stories of, like, my journey with Lincoln, even though I was really strong as a trainer, he still gave me anxiety, at that stage in my life. And I think that just helps people to see, like, there's hope for their dog too. It's not just me being a perfect trainer and I can do everything I need to do with any dog, So, yeah.
So obviously a lot of people get another dog, so whether it's to give their dog company or whatever, or they think it's going to help an issue, and they might be struggling to enrich their dogs and meet all their dogs' needs. So they have a multi-dog household, and it's probably a bit more than what they expected it was going to be. One dog is, there's one dog, and then it's kind of easy, and then they get another one, and they think it's going to be just now they're like, oh my god, I don't have all this. There you go. I've got 2 dogs that I'm struggling to give everything that they need.
Yeah. I think the trick is to find something that you can all do together that every dog gets something out of. So, for example, my Rhodesian loves walks. He's fine with them. My Doberman, I would have to probably walk him a lot longer than my Rhodesian just to satisfy his exercise or physical needs. So instead of having to walk him for an hour or 2, I give him off leash opportunities. So then my Rhodesian can join in on that as well. And we all are off leash, but they're at their own pace. So my Rhodesian's a lot slower, where my Doberman is a lot faster. He's running circles around us the entire time, and we are just walking together slowly. But they're both of their needs are being satisfied. I'm not forcing the Rhodesian to go faster, and I'm not forcing the Doberman to go slower. So for us, when I have a lot of dogs, I do find off-leash opportunities, but that's not for everybody. I'm just saying what works for us. I do find the off-leash helps me to kill multiple birds with one stone. Horrible saying, but you get what I'm saying. So I find that I can get a lot done if I can find an activity that everybody enjoys. And off-leash, whether it's with an e-collar or a long line, I'm not sure if that's something that you guys have available to you back there, but even a long line is nice just to let the dog walk or run at their own pace. You can play games with them. They can play with each other. You can fetch. You can use a flirt pole. You can do a scatter feed. My dogs love that. Grabbing some. They eat raw, so if I'm going to train with them, I'm going to use freeze-dried raw kibble, and I'll just bring a bunch with me, and I'll break them up into tiny pieces, and I just make it rain. And they love that. They love it. They can spend 15 minutes sniffing out kibble in the grass. So lots of different ways. But for me, when you have a multi-dog household, I think it is so beneficial to find an activity that you can do together unless you have the time. For me, I feel like I represent a lot of modern families. You have 2 adults working full time, then you have dogs, you have to come home, and then you got to take care of the dogs, and then you got to cook dinner for the family. So, no, I don't want to spend an hour with each dog every single day. Independently, but some people do, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you have that kind of lifestyle, that's great. Go ahead and do it. But for me, I'm always trying to look for the most efficient and quickest way to get that done. And so I think finding something that all the dogs can enjoy. And then I training sessions. I think and this is a reel that I was actually going in the process of making. So a lot of people don't realize how great just a training session is with your dog. Out of all the activities out there, a find it, hide and seek, puzzles, fetch, a training section can give you so much in 15 minutes. You can get some physical activity in there. You can get some obedience in there. You can get mental stimulation. So there's so much quality behind just a training session. And I was going to make a reel on what does that look like? Because I think sometimes people don't understand what you mean when you're just do a training session with your dog. What do you mean do a training session? So, there are times that if I can tell my Doberman is just a little bored, or it's raining and we really couldn't do much, we're going to do a fun training session, just run through things he already knows, and he loves it. He eats that up. And then the Rhodesian likes anything that leads to food. So, he'll do whatever I ask. So he's another one too, but he just doesn't need as much as the Doberman. The Doberman definitely requires a little bit more.
That's actually a very similar situation to mine. So my youngest dog is super active, prey driving and everything. So she's got really good recall. So we have a paddocky kind of area near our house. She just loves running. She'll just run and run and run. She stays high. And then my lab loves food. So I do a find it game. So I'll just throw one piece of one piece of her food in the grass, and I'll go find it. She has to find it. And it takes her 2 minutes to find it while someone's running around. like this, and then I'll throw another piece, and then she's going off, and then the other one's running. Because like my lab, she just wants to be out. She doesn't actually need to be physically, like, she does, but like she's happy just to walk, and like that's her. She's a bit older now, whereas my other dog actually needs to physically get that outlet out. So she'll be zooming around, and then she'll like get a little bit like, oh, you're doing something with her, I want to get involved, and then so I'll do it for a second, then she's like, okay, that's enough, and then goes off and runs. But that's what she likes to do, and that's what she finds rewarding. So I'm happy for her to go off and just run around and have a blast, as long as she's like checking in, and I'll always reward her for it. But my other dog, she's just like food, like, so. And then even this week I had like really bad weather. We had really bad weather. So in between I did like 5 minutes of flirt pole with both of them, and then like 5-10 minutes of some fun training session, and then they were sweet. Like I didn't need to take them out. And I think normalizing, because I know for me personally, being a dog trainer, sometimes I feel really bad that I'm not dedicating hours every day to my dog. Like I see on social media, like dog trainers like spending hours with their dogs every day, and I feel like really a bit sick.
No, we don't.
By the time I get home and everything, like I'm like, I don't have like all these hours, but it's really nice having talked to you that you find the most efficient way to enrich your dog without having to spend hours. Like that is totally fine.
Yeah. And it really is. And I think a lot of people will try and argue, and they'll be like, not my dog, not my healer, not my border collie. They'll try to throw out the breed and thinking that dog needs 3 to 4 hours of exercise a day. I'm like, I promise you, they don't. Like, give them good 45 minutes to an hour. Maybe some dogs might need an hour, but 45 minutes, can possibly be enough. 15 minutes of mental stimulation, but then it doesn't mean the rest of the day you're ignoring them. Like the rest of the day, my dogs are holding place when I ask them to. It's like a training session. They just don't realize it. It's like, there's so many things that I'm still asking my dogs to do during the day. It's just not an intentional session. They're still having to hold place. They're still having to show doorway manners when we go outside, even if I let them out in the backyard. If guests are coming over, they're holding place. If I'm cooking dinner, they're laying on the ground. Like there's still so much direction they have to take. And even though they're just laying down, they're still thinking, okay, I'm going to lay here. She's going to give me food. I'm going to see how long it takes. I'm just going to let, they're thinking the whole time. They're staying engaged instead of, relaxing. And that alone is mental stimulation. A lot of people don't realize that. So I'm not saying ignore your dog all day, but like you really don't have to go for a 4-hour hike. I promise.
It's the art of doing nothing, right? And I think a lot of people see nothing as an evil thing, especially now when enrichment is so prominent on social media. I feel like it really ticked over, like the scales are now way too, and now it's almost like,
now it's too much.
I need to do this enrichment and that one and that. And I actually had clients message me a few weeks ago, and she was like, oh, I'm just worried I'm not doing enough with my dog. And she walks him every day, sometimes twice, does like a little training session and like a snuffle mat or something. I was like, that's
it's
fine.
plenty.
You do not need to buy 20 puzzles and stuff Kongs everywhere. Like it's okay. Your dog needs to learn to be bored. It's so important.
Yes. Less is more. Less is more. And that's why I try to give like a guideline. 30 to 45 minutes of physical activity should be fine. 15 minutes of yes, every dog is a little different, but not that much, and just finding ways to interact with them throughout the day. Like I'll say, like, you're going to get the mail, take your dog with you. You're going to sit outside and read a book, take your dog with you. Like there's so many. You're going for a car ride where, maybe you're not really getting out of the car. Like, for example, my daughters take horse riding lessons. So I don't have to go like in a building. I'm just dropping them off at a barn and picking them up. I don't actually have to get out of the car. So I'm going to bring my dogs with me once in a while to just go for a car ride. Like there's just so many different things you can do. Like you're still interacting with your dog, but it's not taking any extra time out of your schedule. It's something you were doing already. So find ways to, be together. Of course, like, you don't want to get a dog and ignore it the whole time. Why did you get it? I want my dogs to be with me. I just don't want to spend, 4 hours on a hike every day. Once in a while, we might do that. And then there's also the other issue of, I don't want my dogs expecting that every day. So I actually have one day a week where I don't take them anywhere. I don't do anything other than the typical things we do inside the house that I require of them. And then maybe I do have a fenced in backyard. So, we might spend some time out there, but it's definitely not enough for my Doberman. He can't get to full speed in my backyard. My Rhodesian's fine because he's so lazy. But yeah, so I actually do. There's one day a week I don't do anything with them because I want them to always be used to like there's going to be days where like it's 9 p.m. and I'm not taking you out right now. Like, sorry, and I want them to be comfortable and okay with that and not stressed out, because you hear about that with dogs that are so used to their predictable routine that when you fall off of it, because we're human, like we have to take care of ourselves too. We're going to mess up like that sometimes. Or something bad happened or an emergency. I don't want my dog stressing out because we didn't do what he was anticipating. So like, while everything is always like predictability, got to build predictability, there are also times we have to be unpredictable. So he has a fine line there. Yeah. So I don't think a lot of people realize. Yeah.
Because the amount of people on Facebook that will comment and say like, oh, well, my dog wakes me up at 6, so we need to walk. I'm like, fuck that.
No, you don't.
It's like, that isn't happening.
Yeah, no. And I think it's important as well, because like obviously we're allowed to go on like holidays or whatever. So there's going to be people that like we have our dogs be looked after by. They're not going to have that same routine that they have. So being able to have them be able to adapt to different
absolutely
routines and everything, you're setting them up just to cope in life in general, because you're allowed to go away on holiday and everything, and not everywhere you go you're allowed to take your dog. Like you can't just put them on a flight for a week to go somewhere,
right?
Like some places aren't dog friendly, so your dog just needs to be able to adapt in life as well.
Yes. I mean, just because they're dogs, it doesn't mean they were out frolicking in the fields for hours. I'm like, I think that's where a lot of, your dog most certainly can handle being active for 8-10 hours straight, but it doesn't mean they should. So I think I can handle being active for 20 hours straight, 24 hours straight. I can do it. I'm going to be tired, but it doesn't mean I can't do it. I can do it too. Humans can do that too, but it doesn't mean we should, Yeah. So yes, dogs were designed to be active for when they needed it. But if you really think about the majority of like work dogs, they're not really working all day long, or they might be out on the field watching, but they're not actively moving until they need to. So not every working dog is like that either. They have to learn how to settle so that they can observe, so.
Even Sonna mentioned so we had like a crate training video, podcast last a couple of weeks ago that we've just released, and she mentioned she had a client that like it could never settle, like it was always busy all the time.
Yeah,
because it was like that, its cortisol was always up all the time and it could never actually settle and relax. And then once they actually introduced like a crate, the dog actually settled. I know it's a very kind of off topic statement, but the fact the dog could never settle because it's always busy all the time. And then after actually being able to learn to settle, the stress went right down in this dog.
Yeah, it makes total sense, because the crate takes away the option to do anything else. And when the dog realizes, oh, I've got nothing else to do, I have no options, I might as well settle.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happens. And so sometimes even like if the dog's not crate trained, we'll just put a leash on your dog, keep it short enough, and just sit down. Sit down with your dog, keep it short enough so that they don't have the opportunity to, even if you gave them the full 6 feet, they'll take the full 6 feet and walk around. So don't even give them that. Give them 1 or 2 feet so they could stand comfortably. And eventually they're going to have no other choice. Like there's nothing to do. You took away their options. You can't really teach a dog to settle because it's just like with us. Like if I said, calm down, it's going to make you calm down, So like what you can do is provide them with the opportunity to settle. They have to figure that out on their own. It's not something you can actively teach.
No.
You can teach a position, you can teach the dog to relax, put their chin to the ground, but their mind is not matching. So the crate is a great option for that. And then even place can become something like that, as long as the owners learn how to vary their rate of reinforcement. If you are consistently rewarding the dog, beyond the basics, like in the basics, in the beginning stages of teaching place, you have to reward often to keep the dog, motivated to stay on. But over time, you have to start varying that rewarding and stop rewarding because the dog's going to actively stay engaged with you because he's thinking you're coming back.
Right.
And so if you eventually stop, rewarding and just focus on, if the dog breaks, I'm going to go back and put the dog back on. They eventually they submit to the activity. Okay, I might as well relax. I'm going to be here for a while. So I think that's important too. Kind of goes along with all of what we were talking about. Settling and too much exercise.
And just learning that you don't have to do everything all day. Like you can just.
Yeah. Yes.
From
for sure.
that, seeing that it creates a lot of problems. Like having I hate the saying a tired dog is a good dog, because they're not.
It's not. You're right.
In general, an overtired
dog gives you
causes
zoomies.
more problems.
Exactly. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, and that's because we're only thinking about a tired dog physically, not mentally. And so that's where I think a lot of people fall short, is they just keep trying to add in more exercise, totally forgetting about the mental aspect. The dog just wants to think. The dog wants to problem solve. And that's why he's chewing your molding, because it's something interesting to do. Like he's trying to figure out how he can break it off your wall. Problem solving. So, I mean, a lot of people don't realize how just adding in a 15-minute training session can be huge for a lot of dogs, just to eat, or 2 10-minute sessions. You don't even have to do it long. It's just a little bit to get the dog thinking. Is so helpful. And that kind of leads me to the whole food puzzles and snuffle mats. Love them. I have them. I use them. But I think sometimes when people think mental stimulation, that's immediately what they go to.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is, at first it might be mentally stimulating, but that toy doesn't change. So over time, your dog's going to figure it out, and it's not going to be challenging anymore. And there's going to be no thought process going on anymore. It almost becomes like a muscle memory of how to move the pieces. And so it's not really mentally stimulating anymore. So I usually suggest you alternate toys, so it always stays new, or change out the toys, or just use that in addition to what you're doing. Training sessions to me are number one. You can get so much out of a training session, or just teaching something fun and new.
That's it. I love trick training for this, especially if you just want to have some fun, because sometimes obedience can be a bit but we've done this. All right, let's do a cool trick then. And just teaching your dog how to weave through your legs, that's awesome, man.
It really is. Yeah, I love teaching things too, where you're not really going to need this. There are some skills I need my dogs to do, so we're going to work on it every day until they master it. But then there are some skills that I literally only teach when we need extra mental stimulation and we're doing a training session. So I don't need to worry just how far they get with it. We're just doing it for fun. And so I think one of them was learning to open up a cabinet. I really don't need you to do that. This is literally just for fun. I really don't care if you figure this out or not. Or closing a door, or like you said, weaving through your legs, just having some fun and teaching. I think I was teaching my Doberman how to put his back paws on something, and we were calling it toes because I was calling the front paws touch. I don't need him to put his back paws on anything. It's literally just a fun. I only ever do it when randomly when we're doing a training session. So it's not like he's, super at it and mastered it. It's just because how often do we really teach it? So I think it's fun when you can find things that you don't really need, and you don't have to stress if they get it or not. Just have fun.
That's it. And then that ties in nicely again with doing stuff separately with both dogs, because,
yeah.
For example, my 2 dogs, Zelda is the Kelpie, and she is really smart, but some things she just does not understand. So I got this trick where Lennox, my Staffy, is able to grab stuff out of the laundry and put it in a laundry basket. He has to grab it with his mouth and bring it somewhere else.
Yeah.
And he loves that. And Zelda just cannot understand that trick. It's okay. Because with her, I do jumping tricks. She can jump over arms. Lennox is a bulldozer and just runs straight into me. So
I love that.
It's realizing, and it goes also back to when you take your dogs out, and Lincoln loves to run, and your Rhodesian likes to just walk, right?
Yeah.
It's important to see your dog's personality for what it is. And some dogs just love this, and the other loves that. And just because they live together doesn't mean they have to do everything what the other dog.
Exactly. Yes, I love that. I love that. And you're right. I love that you know that about your dogs and what is interesting to them and what they're capable and what they're really good at. That's so true. There are definitely different tricks that each dog knows. And it's kind of like, yeah, I'm going to teach this to you because I can shape it. Like I can tell you are already doing this. So it's going to be really easy to teach you. Especially for Murphy, my Rhodesian Ridgeback. He's not as smart as Lincoln.
Right.
Like I'm going to totally admit that. Lincoln is very smart. Lincoln picks things up 3 repetitions and we're good. You know, he may not have learned the cue, but he knows exactly what he needs to be doing. Very observant. Where the Rhodesian, he is so food motivated, so he's willing to learn. But he doesn't. It's a lot harder to teach him something when he hasn't already done it. So, but there have been so many things that he picks up on through observation, or it's just something he was already doing. So like for fun, like sometimes when he gets excited, sometimes he would just like pounce in the air, not touching, didn't jump on anybody. He just like all 4 paws. So I'm like, I'm going to totally throw a cue on that, you know? And so I just say, ready, 1, 2, 3, jump, you know, and then he just jumps. And I won't even attempt to teach that to my Doberman because he never does it. I'm like, I don't even know where to begin with that, you know, because he never just jumps up in the air like that. But Rhodesians are very like pouncy. Right. And then same thing with speaking, which is interesting. My Doberman will bark once in a while, but not really to like get my attention, where my Rhodesian once in a while will give me a very gentle, soft to like get my attention. I'm like, I'm going to shape that into speak and then whisper, you know? So it's just like stuff like that. But if he didn't already do those things, I'm like, I don't think I would even try to teach him because he does not pick up on things as quickly as Lincoln does. So yeah, it's fun to, you know, do stuff like that with them. It's different.
Yeah, I love that. It is. I think it is. That's a really nice message, I think, for this podcast. To like look at your dog as an individual, just like kids. Yeah. One likes soccer and the other wants to play basketball. Like, don't have to put them in the same mold just because they're in the same family. Sometimes you have to. Like when you go on a family holiday, you all have to come. But what we do is different. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I mean, recognizing that a dog is not just a dog. Like dog A does not equal dog B. You know, they may be the same species, but they are going to be very different. Even if they came from the same litter, they may have completely opposite personalities, and learning that and understanding that about dogs, I think is so important, because a lot of people just like the very typical temperament and friendliness you might see from like a Labrador or a Golden Retriever is like what they think of as every dog, like a happy dog. Every dog is just a happy dog and loves to be touched and petted and spoken to and interacted with and jumping in the puddles. So like when the other dog doesn't do that, they think they're weird or there's something wrong with them. And it's like, no, it's just a different personality. I have 2 daughters that came from the same parents, and they are as opposite can be. They don't even like, their hair color is opposite. Their eyes are opposite. One's brown, one's blonde, you know, one has blue eyes, one has brown eyes. Oh, so, and their personalities are very different. So it's not any different for our dogs.
Awesome. I think we should wrap it up on that one. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I enjoyed the conversation.
I love your Instagram account. I love your messaging. I feel like we're very similar. So it's nice to talk with all types of trainers.
Yeah.
This podcast isn't for trainers. It's for dog owners. And I think you do a really good job of teaching owners, and like it's guilt-free and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Thank you so much.